everyone, it's Erica. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my November wrap-up. I had a mixed reading month in November. I enjoyed 8 of the 13 books that I read, but there was about 5 that I didn't like. I have lots to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. The first book I read this month was Sweet Evil by Wendy Higgins. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy series. This series is all about the sons and daughters of fallen angels. We follow the main character named Anna Witt, and she was born with a sixth sense. She has the ability to see and feel the emotions of other people. She's always had her angel side to balance the darkness within, but she feels an inexplicable pull towards danger. This is evident when she meets Caden Rowe. Caden and Anna are Nephilim, which means they're the children of fallen angels. Their fathers are usually demons, while their mothers are humans. But Anna is different, because her father was a demon, but her mother was an angel. So she's a special kind of Nephilim, and different from her kind. Caden and Anna develop feelings for each other, but their relationship is forbidden because Caden faces death if Anna and Caden become intimate, and Caden is tasked with taking Anna's virginity. The story starts off with Anna not knowing that she's a Nephilim, or even part of this paranormal world. And Anna was adopted as a baby by this woman named Patty, and it's always just been her and Patty together. However, Anna takes a road trip with Caden to find out more about who she is and where she comes from. This road trip that they take really develops Anna and Caden's relationship, and you can definitely believe the connection between them through this road trip. There's a definite chemistry between Anna and Caden. Anna doesn't really know what to do about her feelings. Caden is attracted to her, but he doesn't want to ruin anything, since he values their friendship. I enjoyed learning about the Nephilim in the paranormal world, and I really liked how Caden and Anna's relationship naturally developed. I really enjoyed the relationship between them, and the paranormal aspects overall. I believe I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. The next book I read was Sweet Peril. This is the second book in the Sweet Evil series. In this book, Anna learns that she's part of a prophecy, because her mother was an angel, and because she has a stronger angelic side. She's at the center of a prophecy where she's supposed to kill the demons in the world so that the Nephilim can live in freedom without the demons and the dukes controlling their lives. At first, Anna doesn't know what to think about this prophecy, but she's determined to take on the challenge. So the plot in this book involves Anna recruiting Nephilim allies in order to form an army to take down the dukes and the demons in this world. I didn't enjoy this second book as much as the first one, unfortunately. The plot in this book was slow. It was hard for me to get through the beginning. This book involves Anna traveling with a Nephilim ally named Copeland. Copeland gets in the middle of Anna and Caden's relationship. I didn't really like this love triangle in the book. To me, it felt silly and immature, so I didn't really like this part of the storyline. Caden is determined to keep his distance from Anna, since he knows it's not good for them to be together. So Caden and Anna don't really interact much in this second book. And Caden knows that Copeland has feelings for Anna. Caden actually gives Copeland permission to make a move on Anna, and Anna is frustrated with this. She's frustrated with how Caden is handling things. I didn't really like this immature, unnecessary drama. However, I did like learning about the backstory, about some of the new characters that were introduced, and some of these new Nephilim allies that Anna recruits. Later on in the story, Caden and Anna eventually reunite, and I did like how they reunited with each other. It was just the middle of the story that I had a problem with. I also had a problem with the pacing in this book. The beginning of the book was slow, and it took some time to get into it. There would be a point of action, but then the pacing of the book would just stop and get slow again. Because of all those things, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it overall. I was just disappointed with some aspects of it. Next up, I read Sweet Reckoning. This is the third book in the Sweet Evil series. In this book, Anna finally confronts the demons and banishes them from the world so that the Nephilim can live in freedom and make their own choices. I liked this book more than the previous one. The second book in this trilogy definitely suffered from middle book syndrome. However, this third book was more action-packed, and I loved how the trilogy wrapped up. The only problem that I had in this book was the battle scene. I felt like the actual battle happened too quickly. I liked the new relationship developments that happened in Hayden and Anna's relationship in this book, and the epilogue to this trilogy was everything. I really loved that as well. I borrowed Sweet Peril and Sweet Reckoning from the library, so I don't own my own copies of those books. However, I do own a copy of Sweet Temptation by Wendy Higgins. This is the fourth book in the Sweet Evil series, and it's more of a companion book to the original trilogy. This book follows Caden's point of view, following all the events in the trilogy. I did really enjoy spending time in Caden's head, and I would definitely describe this book as more new adult, since Caden's thoughts about his relationship and Anna are a little too steamy for YA. I particularly liked hearing Caden's thoughts during the events of Sweet Peril. It was nice to hear how he was feeling, because in the original trilogy, we don't really understand what he's feeling towards Anna, since Anna and Caden spend some time apart. You can definitely tell that during this time, Caden still really loves Anna and cares for her so deeply, but he's not really sure how to fix their relationship. And because you see his perspective, you can see how Anna was misreading some of the events in their relationship. Also in Sweet Peril, I enjoyed the scenes where Anna and Caden reunited with each other and some of the sex scenes in this book. I really enjoyed reading some of those steamy scenes. The epilogue to this book was everything, and I enjoyed reading it from Caden's perspective as well. I still really love the original Sweet Evil trilogy, but I do have to admit I did enjoy reading from Caden's perspective a little bit more, since it is a little bit more new adult than YA. I really liked getting to understand him more as a character through this book. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I could definitely see myself rereading this trilogy or just this 4th book. I really enjoyed it a lot. While I was sick at the end of October, I didn't really have any plans for a November TBR, so my reading was all over the place this month. The next book I picked up was The Iron King by Julie Kagawa. This is the first book in a YA fantasy series, and I didn't really like this first book at all. We follow the main character named Megan Chase, who's half human and half fae. She lives with her mom, stepfather, and her half-brother Ethan. The story really starts when her younger brother Ethan is kidnapped. Megan also has this best friend, Robbie, who she's had for a while, but she doesn't really know anything about him. Aside from her getting kidnapped, strange things start happening to her while she's at school, and she's seeing strange things that aren't really there. Megan later learns that she's really seeing the world of the Fae. Her good friend Robbie is actually a character named Robin Goodfellow, nicknamed Puck, and he is Fae. So Megan and her friend Puck travel to the Summer Kingdom, and there Megan meets her biological father. She learns that her mother, who's human, had an affair with her father to create her. Her father wanted her friend Puck to conceal the Fae world from her in order to protect her, but Megan refused, since she wanted to see the Fae world in order to try to get her brother back. While Megan is at her father's kingdom, she also meets this guy named Ash, who is a Fae prince from the Summer Kingdom. And the Summer Kingdom and her kingdom, the Winter Kingdom, are rivals. Megan eventually learns that her brother is actually in the Iron Kingdom. Megan wants to travel there in order to get her brother back and return him home. The Iron Fae and the Iron Kingdom in general are not known to exist in the Fae world. Megan somehow finds out that her brother is there, I didn't really like this book very much. I didn't really connect with Megan as a character at all. She's mostly a passive character and she's always getting into trouble, and Puck or Ash need to save her from this trouble when she makes stupid decisions. Also, there was so much action in this plot, and this left very little room for character development or for me to even get connected to any of the characters. The only character that I did like was Puck, Megan's friend. He's humorous and lighthearted and sort of balances the book in terms of all the action and in the serious stuff that's going on. Ash is the love interest in this story. Megan and Ash aren't supposed to be together since they're from rival kingdoms. I didn't really believe in their connection since the relationship between them is completely insta-love. The conclusion to this book was flat for me, and since I didn't really believe in the romance in this book, I wasn't really interested in continuing on with the series. So I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Storm by Brigid. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy series. We follow the main character named Becca, who, when she's coming out of a self-defense class one night, she sees a guy that she knows from school, named Chris, being attacked by 2 guys in the parking lot. She doesn't really know what to do, but she quickly makes the decision to help him and try to fend off his attackers. She ends up succeeding, saving him from this attack. Becca returns Chris home that night, and from there she meets Chris's brothers, Michael, Gabriel, and Nick. She learns that Chris and his family don't really have parents because their parents died years ago. Michael is the oldest in the family. He's the overprotective brother. Gabriel is sort of the obnoxious bad boy. Nick is a kind, shy character who's the peacemaker in his family. And Chris is just average. When one of Chris's attackers confront Becca at school the next day, Becca quickly learns that Chris and his brothers are actually elementals. They have the power to control the elements. Michael's element is earth. Gabriel's element is fire. Nick's element is air. And Chris's element is water. Becca also learns that their powers are tied to their emotions. And if their emotions aren't kept in check, they can really hurt people. Elementals are governed by guides. And if something goes wrong, guides try to apprehend them and eventually kill them if what they do is really bad. So the brothers are just trying to control their powers and keep themselves under the radar, out of the sights of the guides. I enjoyed the paranormal aspect of this book. It was really interesting, but the world building and the paranormal aspect was basic in my opinion. There's also a love triangle in this book between Becca and Chris and a boy named Hunter. There's also dual perspective in this book. You get to see things from Becca's perspective, but you also get to see things from Chris's perspective and learn more about his family and just the dynamics between him and the rest of his brothers. Chris has feelings for Becca. He has had feelings for Becca since the night that she saved him. But he doesn't really know what to do about these feelings, since Becca is more interested in Hunter. I forget the job that Hunter has in this book, but he's fascinated with stones and people's souls and their purpose in life. Hunter seems like a really sweet guy, and there's a little chemistry between him and Becca. But there's also chemistry between Becca and Chris as well. I enjoyed both love interests. Becca also has a best friend, Quinn, that's more like a sister, since she spends a lot of her time at Becca's house and she doesn't really have a good relationship with her mother. There's also a brief appearance of Becca's father in this book, and you can tell that there's tension between Becca and her father. Her mother and her father are divorced. Becca's father hasn't really had a prominent role in her life. Aside from that, Becca's father didn't really have much of a role in the story. I felt like he was just a present character that didn't really have a purpose at all. I did like how this book wrapped up and who Becca eventually decided to be with. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars though, since I did find the world building to be a little basic and the love triangle was immature at times. But I did like Becca and Chris's relationship. And this is one of the books this month that I actually did like. The other books in the series follow the different brothers in Chris's family. So I'm curious to continue on with the series and learn about the brothers a little bit more. The next book I picked up was A Need So Beautiful by Suzanne Young. This is the first book in another YA paranormal fantasy, and it's a duology. This book follows the main character named Charlotte, who's turning into an angel, but she doesn't know it yet. Charlotte learns that she's one of the forgotten, but she has this compulsion called the need, and this compulsion compels her to help someone in need, usually a stranger. I didn't really like the character of Charlotte. I felt that she was so stereotypical, and she didn't really have much of a personality at all, other than being obsessed with her boyfriend. Her best friend Sara was also a cookie-cutter character. She was supposed to be funny and humorous, but she was also really one-dimensional, so I didn't really feel connected to her character at all. I also didn't enjoy the romance in this book. Charlotte and her boyfriend Harlan are already in a relationship, but it was so insta-love, and I didn't really understand why they're in love with each other. The book didn't really preface or show why they're in a relationship with each other. The story in general was incredibly dull, and the beginning was slow and hard to get into. You're shown what it's like when Charlotte tries to help someone. You're not really connected to any of these characters as the story progresses, since each time she helps someone is an individual incident. The only character that I found remotely interesting was Dr. Monroe, but the way he reacted to Charlotte turning into an angel was just weird, and the world building in general was just a little too strange for me. As the story progresses, you're not really sure what Dr. Monroe's true intentions are when it comes to Charlotte, and this is the only aspect of the story that's only somewhat interesting. The rest of the book was just completely dull and fell flat for me. The ending to this book was supposed to be mysterious and shocking, but since I wasn't really invested in the story or connected to any of these characters, I didn't care enough to want to continue the series. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I was disappointed with this book all around, pretty much. The next book I read was Paranormalcy by Kiersten. This is the first book in another YA paranormal trilogy, and unfortunately, I was also disappointed with this book. We follow the main character named Evie, who works for the International Paranormal Containment Agency. It's Evie's job to capture paranormal creatures and take them into the agency so they can be contained, stopped from doing the evil things that they're not supposed to be doing. Evie has worked for the agency pretty much all her life since she was adopted by one of the agents at this agency. She's pretty much worked there since she was a young child. She has a best friend who's a mermaid whose name is Lish. I found the name of her best friend really strange. What kind of a name is Lish anyway? The story starts off when a strange, unknown paranormal creature is captured by the agency. Evie sort of has an instant connection with this character named Lend, which is also another strange name. I didn't really like Lend as a love interest, and the whole relationship between him and Evie was insta-love. She's instantly attracted and instantly in love with Lend as soon as they meet. She finds out that Lend goes to a regular high school, and the only thing that she knows about ordinary human life is from the teenage drama show that she watches. Also, Evie finds out that she's actually a level 7 paranormal creature, but she doesn't really know what that means or what kind of creature she is. She also has this fairy ex-boyfriend who's mean and has an agenda to get her back. As the story progresses, Evie meets Len's family and learns their new way of life and how they treat paranormals that's different from the agency. And now that she knows this new way of life, she's determined not to go back to the agency. My first problem was the romance. I didn't really find it believable at all. I did enjoy meeting Len's family. The pacing of the story was slow, so it took a long time for me to get into this story. You shouldn't have to wait through half of a book before you start understanding what's really going on in the story. Because it took nearly halfway through the book for the story to get going, I didn't find myself connected to the main character, Evie, or any of the story, or any of the other characters. I'm not invested enough to want to continue on with the trilogy. After being disappointed by a few paranormal books, I decided to take a break from paranormal, so I ended up picking up Love Me Never by Sara. This is the first book in the Lovely Vicious series. Follows this girl named Isis Blake, who is an average teenage girl. She hasn't been in love for 9 weeks or so many days because she had a bad experience with an old boyfriend. She's just determined to move on from that relationship and move to a new city with her mom, since her mom is recuperating from being in an abusive relationship. One day at school, she meets a new student named Jack Hunter. Jack Hunter has a reputation of known for dating older women and not really giving high school girls the time of day. He seems like a very private character who doesn't really get close to anyone. Isis used to be overweight. She feels better about her body, but she still has self-esteem issues. She meets this girl named Kayla at a house party one night. Jack insults this girl named Kayla. Isis doesn't really like Jack Hunter, and from that point on, Isis and Jack sort of have an enemies to lovers relationship. They're always at each other's throats, but you can tell that Isis and Jack have chemistry. Even though Jack infuriates and annoys Isis, she's determined to find out more about him, because Jack also intrigues her. Isis eventually learns that Jack is an escort, and she also learns that Jack and Isis's friend Ren and Avery all used to be friends in middle school until something terrible happened. And I do like the mystery that Isis is trying to find out exactly what happened between Ren, Jack, and Avery all those years ago. Isis is a very tough character, but she's also an insecure character since she has body image issues and self-esteem issues as well. Because she had a bad experience with an old boyfriend, she doesn't really feel that she's pretty or worthy of being loved, and Jack is determined to prove her wrong. Through this book, you also get to see Isis's home life and what her relationship with her mom is like. The conclusion to this book completely shocked me and absolutely made me want to pick up the next books in this trilogy. This book reminded me of Bully by Penelope Douglas. It definitely had a similar feel to it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I naturally picked up Forget Me Always by Sara. This book starts where the previous one left off. Isis is recuperating in the hospital after her accident in the previous book. Isis also has amnesia, since she doesn't remember her Jack or anything about Sophia. Sophia, though, is Isis's roommate in the hospital. She doesn't remember her anything about Sophia or how she's connected to Jack. Because Isis doesn't have her memories, she and Sophia become friends while they're in the hospital together. But as Isis's memories return, she learns that Sophia is hiding secrets about herself and about Jack. At first I liked Sophia. I thought she was a nice character. Jack and Sophia used to be in a relationship with each other before Sophia got sick, and Jack and Sophia used to communicate in letters to each other. Sophia learned that Jack was finally moving on from her, that he was starting to develop feeling for Isis. Sophia was happy that Jack was moving on and could finally find some happiness in his life. Sophia still feels like she has a claim on Jack, and I didn't like that about this book. I also liked getting Jack's perspective in this book, which is something that we didn't get in the previous book. We get to see how he feels caught in the middle between Isis and Sophia. He also feels guilty that he didn't save Isis in time from getting attacked in the previous book. He still has some feelings for Sophia, but you can tell he obviously still deeply loves Isis, and he's upset that she doesn't remember him. Isis doesn't think much of Jack in this book because she thinks that Sophia and Jack are still in a relationship, and she feels like Jack is cheating on Sophia because Jack has feelings for Isis. So I could also understand Isis's feelings since she doesn't have her memories. I love all the twists and turns and the revelations that we discover about the characters in this book. I could see the conclusion to this book coming, since I do have extensive knowledge about the topic that's addressed in this book, and this book does deal with some pretty emotional topics, but I still like all the relationship dynamics with the characters in this trilogy. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was obviously Remember Me Forever. This is the third and final book in the Lovely Vicious trilogy. This book has Isis and Jack living separate lives, since Jack left Isis and everyone around him after the events of the last book. Jack has been spending his time training in physical fighting with this company called Vortex. The characters have all graduated high school, and Isis finds herself at Ohio State, since she decided to go to a different college than she was planning to. Nameless, which is the nickname that she gives her old boyfriend Will, is also going to the same college she is. Jack and his team get recruited to take down Nameless and some of the criminal activity that he's involved in. So Jack enrolls at Ohio State, the same college that Isis is going to. Isis and Jack are very distant from each other in this book. Jack completely left her without notice or any explanation. So this book is about them finding their way back to each other after the tragedy in the previous book. Isis is still hurt by Jack, but there is some of that humorous banter between them still there once they're around each other. You can tell that Jack still really loves Isis, but he doesn't feel worthy of being with her because he left her and hurt her. I enjoyed this book a little less than the previous one because there's not as much chemistry or fiery banter between Jack and Isis in this book, so I found the story a little less engaging, but I still enjoyed the story overall. I felt that the reunion between Jack and Isis felt a little too rushed to me. Jack's story in this book felt a little unbelievable to me. This book just told readers what Jack had been up to instead of showing what he had been up to. The epilogue to this book was good, but I felt that some of the hints just happened out of the blue. Because I was disappointed with some aspects of this book, I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Girl in Pieces by Glasgow. This is a YA contemporary standalone, and it follows this girl named Charlie, who's been living on the streets since her mom kicked her out and her best friend attempted suicide. So Charlie doesn't really have a support system around her. She has reacted to the events in her life in destructive ways. Charlie is a cutter, and she self-harms to cope with all the events in her life and all the pain that she's experienced. The beginning of this story was slow. The reader isn't really given an explanation as to what's going on. You're basically just following Charlie and her life from the first page. This book was really hard to read because it's deeply emotional and it's dark and gritty. There was definitely heavy themes in this book, such as depression, suicide, self-harming, an unhealthy relationship, and sexual abuse. This book is written realistically in just the way a damaged teenager would think about herself and behave. The pacing of this book was really slow, however, and there were certain scenes in this book where I didn't learn anything about Charlie or any of the other characters. I do feel that this was an important book to read, and the topics that were addressed in this book were handled really well. However, because I found some parts of this book tedious, I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I'm glad I did read the story, but it's not necessarily a book that I would reread again. The next book I read was The Alchemy of Forever by Avery Williams. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy duology. I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't like it that much at all. We're following this character named Serafina, who is an incarnate, which means she has the ability to take the soul of others and inhabit her bodies. This man named Cyrus in the book is the person who created the incarnates. Serafina is an immortal, but she wants to give up her immortality because she doesn't want to kill human lives just to inhabit their bodies anymore. But unfortunately, she doesn't get her wish when an unfortunate car accident occurs. Serafina tries to save this human girl, but she accidentally inhabits her body. She inhabits the body of Kaylee Morgan. I don't really have much to say about the main character, Serafina, because we never really get an impression as to who she is as a character. Nor do we get a backstory or glimpses as to who Kaylee is before Serafina came along and took her body. There are secondary characters in this novel, like Kaylee's parents and Serafina's friends, but no one really notices any differences about her. But Kaylee's friends are just present in the novel, and they don't really have any personalities of their own at all. The only person that seems to notice differences about her is Noah. Noah admits that he has feelings for Kaylee. We're not really sure if he's attracted to Serafina because he's noticing differences and he's actually attracted to Serafina, or if he sees some of Kaylee's personality traits in Serafina. So the relationship between Noah and Serafina is insta-love. The other problem with this book is that it was so short, and we didn't really get a chance to examine anything extensively in the story. So because of that, I didn't really find myself connected to the main character or any of the secondary characters. And I was disappointed that I wasted my time on this novel. It definitely wasn't the book for me. Finally, the last book I read this month was Die For Me by Amy Plum. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy trilogy. And unfortunately, I was disappointed by this book as well. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. This book follows a girl named Kate, who is living in Paris with her older sister and her grandparents, since her parents died less than a year ago. Kate is adjusting to life in Paris when she meets this guy named Vincent, and from the moment she meets him, she's instantly attracted to him. Things start happening around Kate when she witnesses Vincent saving the life of a human girl. And from there, Kate wants to find out what's going on. She visits Vincent, and she learns that Vincent and his family are actually revenants, undead guardians, who are compelled to save the lives of humans. Their enemies are Numas, who are undead evildoers, who lure humans to their deaths through different methods. I felt that the world was interesting and unlike anything I've ever heard before, and I appreciated that this book was set in Paris, since most YA paranormal books are set in America. The main problem that I had with this book is the romance. The relationship between Vincent and Kate are insta-love. Vincent explains that the reason why he is even more obsessed with Kate is because he rescued her. It's a rule in the world that revenants become even more obsessed with the people that they rescue, and he claims that he's never felt anything like this before, but I didn't really find this believable. I found that this was just too convenient and contrived. I didn't believe in the connection between Kate and Vincent at all, from both of their perspectives. I didn't like Kate as a main character either. He was a passive character. She's just gladly swept up into Vincent's world. Her whole existence is being in a relationship with Vincent. I don't like this type of main character or relationship, so I didn't really like the book that much. I also found the story predictable. Once the character of Lucian was introduced, I knew what would happen with the story. Since I guessed the general arc of the plot, I didn't find anything in this book really that surprising. The conclusion to this book was action-packed. Since I could already see it coming, I didn't really find anything that gripping about it. The conclusion to this book was clean, but since I'm not connected to any of the characters, and since I didn't like the romance in this book, I'm definitely not going to be continuing on with the trilogy. Those are all of the books that I read in November. Comment down below and tell me what you read in November. I know that this wrap-up was long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos from me, I'll put some videos up on the screen in case you guys want to check those out. I'll see you guys in my next video.